news this week. Australian church leaders speak out on same-sex marriage. The Adventist Church takes a stand on vaccination. And 30,000 people are baptised in Zimbabwe.
Just for the record, this is InFocus Christian News and Current Affairs.
Hello, thanks so much for joining us this week. I'm Kent Kingston, and at the news desk is my co-host Sybil Coutet. Been well, Sybil?
I have, thank you, Kent. What about you?
Yeah, fantastic. Now, stay with us for the next half hour because InFocus is bringing you information and inspiration, political commentary from Canberra, the whole story on Wholegrains, and we'll meet a Brazilian actor who's passionate about his craft and sharing Christ. It's all coming up after the news. Sybil.
Thanks, Kent. After Ireland's surprise same-sex marriage referendum, politicians in Australia are pushing for the issue to be reconsidered. But despite what looks like a changing political landscape, a number of Christian leaders in Australia have spoken out in favour of the status quo. Among the public statements on the issue was a pastoral letter from the Catholic Bishops of Australia, a media release from the Moderator General of the Presbyterian Church, and a statement from the New South Wales Council of Churches. The statements pointed to the unique status of man-woman marriage and warned that the notion of marriage equality fails to account for the potential for children that lies at the core of the concept. There was also concern that an acceptance of same-sex marriage may lead to legal action being taken against those clergy whose consciences will not allow them to conduct same-sex marriage ceremonies. After calls for an urgent review, the New South Wales Education Department has lifted its ban on 2 out of the 3 books it prohibited from being used in scripture classes in public schools. The ban was imposed earlier this month after complaints from secularist groups that the book's Bible-based messages on relationships and sexuality were damaging to children. But after Anglican leaders pointed out that 2 of the 3 books were on the officially approved curriculum list for their special religious education teachers and sought an urgent meeting with the New South Wales Education Minister, the ban was reversed for those 2 books. The Minister has also conceded that the 3rd book was never part of the Anglican scripture curriculum. The Adventist Church in Australia and New Zealand has reached a formal agreement that will enable local congregations to deliver a depression recovery program to their communities. Oklahoma doctor Neil Nedley developed his depression recovery program more than a decade ago. It's a group-based, holistic program that emphasises the importance of healthy lifestyle, positive thinking and spiritual practices in reducing the impact of depression and anxiety.
The program is designed to be offered by lay people, with the expertise of the psychiatrist and the medical doctor provided in the video component, and the lay people there to help people on this journey.
The program materials are being refreshed and updated ahead of their launch in Australia and New Zealand. As the battle against Islamic State in Syria and Iraq rages, the region's beleaguered Christians are struggling with a choice between fight or flight. Sojourners reports that Sunni Muslims in IS-occupied territory have had some success with protests, boycotts and other non-violent resistance, but other religious groups, who have been treated more harshly, are generally not so brave. According to Christian Post, a report has emerged of a Christian militia beheading a captured IS fighter in Syria's Hasake province. The killing is believed to be in revenge for the abuses perpetrated by Islamic State against Christians and others in the region. The controversy over vaccination has been heating up this year, with the Australian government threatening to deny welfare benefits to parents who refuse to immunise their children. Concerns have been raised that the rights of parents to object to vaccinations on religious grounds are not adequately protected, even though a religious exemption clause is included in the legislation. But the Seventhday Adventist Church, which operates hospitals and other medical facilities around the world, has released an official statement saying it encourages responsible immunisation and has no faith-based reason to discourage church members from having their children immunised. However, the church statement also says it recognises the rights of the individual to choose. Atheists, agnostics, and other non-religious people in the United States say they face social hostility and even family breakdown because of their non-belief. But they have a surprising ally in the form of a Southern Baptist pastor.
Now, you probably are wondering immediately, why would I then be doing a video at the site of Openly Secular? Well, the reason is, though we do disagree about some very important issues, we also agree about some important things as well.
Pastor Danny Akin is president of the Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary in North Carolina and says he's supporting the Openly Secular campaign because he believes everyone should be able to express their beliefs or unbelief without facing hatred or discrimination. Baptist News reports Pastor Akin is looking for opportunities to work together with secularists on joint projects focused on issues like poverty reduction and the environment. So many church buildings stand empty through the week, and for the Adventist Development and Relief Agency in New Zealand, it's a golden opportunity to serve local communities. ADRA's Church Partnership Program helps congregations use established strategies to provide needed advice, support and training to their neighbours as they rebadge their church halls as My Family Centres.
The kind of programs the Church Partnership Initiative have been providing baby clothing libraries, family budgeting initiatives. We're currently looking at a family health program and a youth development initiative. So it's all been very positive, and it's great seeing the churches come on board. As of last month, we're now up to 42 projects across the country. It's something that's working across the entire country from Kaitaia all the way through to Invercargill.
The scale of a massive multi-site evangelistic outreach program in Zimbabwe has provoked amazement and interest from around the country, with around 30,000 people baptised by the close of the two-week series. According to Adventist Review, nightly attendance at the meetings in a field near the capital Harare has been 20,000. Many of those at the meetings have also benefited from a free medical and dental clinic program, which has provided health care to tens of thousands of people. The success of the clinic has prompted the Zimbabwe government to request Adventist church leaders to build a hospital in the country. In addition to the events in Harare, meetings are being held throughout the country in several hundred local churches and other locations, attracting thousands more. New Zealanders like to go tramping, and some people prefer glamping. But what about champing? Camping in churches is an opportunity provided by the UK's Churches Conservation Trust, which is keen to preserve the architecture and history encapsulated in the nation's church buildings. They've made 3 of the 347 churches they care for available for overnight stays. Conditions are rustic, with no guarantee of electricity or hot water. But few experiences compare to waking up to a sunrise as it illuminates stained glass windows. And that's the news for this week. It's true, you know, the UK does have some really beautiful churches.
Yeah, it certainly looks like it. But champing, I mean, it's it's kind of sad that, you know, these churches are no longer places of worship. But it would be kind of fun to spend the night in one, I think.
Definitely.
Hey, don't go away. I'll be back in a flash with Lyle Shelton and Politics in Focus.
So you think you've got your future all planned out, right? Or maybe you're not sure yet what you want to do, who you want to be, but whatever path you choose to study, a great education matters. Because it doesn't just help you get a great job, it helps you prepare for what life can throw at you and live a great life. Avondale. It's education designed for life.
Hello, it's good to have you back. And joining us now from Canberra for the first Politics in Focus of winter is Lyle Shelton. Cold weather and hot issues, Lyle.
Yes, that's a good way to describe it, Kent.
Now, Lyle, we know, of course, that same-sex marriage is a very controversial issue. Even Christians are taking quite opposite views. Now, you're just back from Parliament House yourself. If the Prime Minister was to soften his stance and allow his party a conscience vote on Bill Shorten's private members bill, do we have any idea what the outcome would be?
It's hard to know, Kent. The numbers certainly have tightened up over the last week or so, but there's still a lot of members of Parliament making up their minds on this, and I think the more that we focus on the consequences, I think you'll see people realising that, hang on, this is far more than just the sound bites that we've heard about marriage equality and equal love, that this does actually affect children and their right to be allowed to know who their biological mum and dad are. Because remember, Mr Shorten's saying that we should replace the words man and woman, husband and wife in the Marriage Act with two people, and that of course means replacing one of the most important persons in a child's life in a marriage, in a family structure. So big consequences here, and I don't think the debate's over by any measure yet. Still a long way to go, as Bill Shorten's bill is not the one that's going to be ultimately voted on.
Okay. Have you had a chance to have a look at Bill Shorten's bill or the Greens' proposed legislation? Do they allow sufficient protection for people, Christian clergy, for example, whose consciences wouldn't allow them to participate in a same-sex wedding? Bill Shorten's bill purports to say that there's protections, but these things can be changed, and it would just take a motion at a Labor Party conference to change the party's policy, and suddenly those protections for religious ministers are gone. There's no protections in Bill Shorten's bill for marriage celebrants who are not religious. There's no protections for people who provide services to the wedding industry whose conscience might cause them to not want to participate in that. And of course there's no protections for a child to have the truth about their parentage on their birth certificate. So there's some big issues and big problems with Bill Shorten's bill, which is a real worry. And Ken, if I could just pick you up on the point you made in your intro, there might be some Christians at lay level who are confused culturally by this, but every denomination in Australia is very clear in its teaching of supporting marriage between a man and a woman, and the Christian church is really doing a wonderful job at taking a strong stand on this in this country. Okay, really, I would have thought maybe the Uniting Church or the Melbourne Anglicans might be not quite so keen. Even the Uniting Church and the Melbourne Anglicans are supportive of marriage between a man and a woman. Okay, well thanks so much for your time this week, Lyle. Pleasure, Kent, thanks for having us. And now it's over to James Toogood, Sue Rad and Food in Focus.
Who would have ever thought that by avoiding too many puffed rice cereals you could be adding years to your life? It's just incredible when you think about it. Are all carbs bad? What's it all about? Sue, it's really good to see you today.
Hi, James.
Yeah, tell us about this.
Too.
Whole grains versus puffed rice grains, this white kind of stuff.
Well, whole grains are a lot more than just high fibre.
Okay.
Often when people buy high fibre things, they assume they're eating a whole grain. But a whole grain actually means that you're consuming the intact whole grain as nature intended, which means the outer bran, the inner endosperm and the germ. But what happens with refining, of course, is they remove the bran, remove the germ, because that prolongs shelf life. It also produces that white fluffy flour that's then used in a myriad of...
Oh, I didn't know that's why they do it. It lasts longer on the shelf.
It's all about shelf life, absolutely.
Okay. But they've done a study of over 100,000 people in the United States, and what have they found?
Yeah, well, we've known for a long time, of course, that eating more whole grains lowers your blood pressure, lowers your cholesterol, is good for the arteries, good for insulin, lots of things. But the latest study from Harvard School of Public Health, and this is over more than 100,000 people, men and women in America, has shown that as you increase the intake of 100% whole grains, you prolong life. You basically extend your life expectancy.
Now, what was staggering to me, folks, this was incredible. Sue told me the difference or the spread between those that had in this study a lot versus no whole grains. Wasn't that great?
Well, it is an American population, and which is a Western population, and of course people don't necessarily eat a lot of whole grains anymore as they used to in ancient times. So when they spread them into 5 groups, if you compare the upper 1/5 of whole grain consumers compared to the lower one, the upper group had a 9% reduced risk of premature death. So that's, you know, it's still very significant, but they're not necessarily the biggest whole grain consumers, Western populations. But if you look at it on a per serve basis, so say you take a slice of whole grain bread,
so we can see what we get in one day.
100% whole grain bread, per whole grain serve, there's about a 5% reduced risk of premature death.
Okay. So here we have 2 slices of bread.
Yeah.
We've got 2 slices of white, 2 slices of whole grain.
We do. So one of the things people can think about is how to just tweak what they're currently doing to add more whole grain foods onto their plate. So starting from breakfast there, James.
Okay, yes.
Rather than using highly refined, puffed, extruded breakfast cereals, choose the ones that are whole grain, or use natural whole grains such as rolled oats or any other rolled grain. So you've got the whole grain that's just been pressed and rolled.
Okay.
Easy swap, and there you've got a whole grain already.
That's the old-fashioned
for
porridge.
breakfast. It can be.
Yeah. Okay.
For lunch, rather than using white bread, which is highly refined and is not made from the whole grain, use a bread made from the whole grains, the flours that are 100% wholemeal, and then add other grains and seeds into those as well. Another easy swap.
Do you mind if I ask a dumb question?
No question's a dumb question.
Yeah. So 2 slices of bread, that's 2 serves, isn't it?
That's 2 serves.
2 serves,
Yep.
1 sandwich.
Yep, so
2
that
serves.
would be like a 10% reduced risk of premature death by including 2 serves of whole
So you
grains.
swap 1 white bread sandwich for 1 true whole grain sandwich?
Yep, and you may be
crazy.
prolonging your life.
Yeah. Okay.
And then when it comes to dinner, instead of using refined grains again, such as white rice, which are common when you think about eating out and takeaway,
And it is easy to cook.
easy to cook. Do something else that's just as easy to cook. If you've got a rice cooker, you can cook any whole grains in any combination. Believe me, because I do it all the time.
Okay.
So this particular combo here is red rice. We've got some barley there, and we've got some long whole grain or brown rice. So any combination works. The effort is no greater. You just wash it, put it in. It just takes a little longer, but no more effort on your behalf. And even snacks. So, for example, whole corn is a whole grain. And what a wonderful snack that is. Takes me back to my childhood days. But puffed, extruded, cakes like corn cakes, rice cakes, they're highly refined. So they raise your blood glucose, your insulin levels very rapidly, promote inflammation, whereas when you eat the whole grains, they have the opposite effect. So the bottom line is, there's lots of definitions of whole grain, but what we're talking about here is using foods that are made from intact grains where there's been no refining. So we're talking about using 100% whole grain foods because they are associated with the best.
Oh, look, folks, it's just amazing. I used to think that this was really healthy food, and yet once again, Sue showed me you just can't beat whole grains. And I think just 6 serves each day of unrefined grains is going to reduce your mortality or your death rate by up to 30%. 6 serves, 30%. It's crazy, Sue. Who would have ever thought?
And it stops you from overeating.
Well, I am going to munch
so
the sweet corn. Live a long life.
No matter what shade of musical taste you have, you might just find something that sings to you. It's all waiting to be discovered at saltermusic.com. Fresh and exciting original Christian music from Salter Music.
Travel back in time to ancient civilizations through this bi-monthly magazine, Archaeological Diggings. This month, Diggings goes inside the amazing burial mound at Amphipolis in Greece, a site to rival the tomb of King Tut. But who is buried there? We look at the claim that Jesus' bodily remains have been unearthed, along with those of his family. And we also bring you the latest news from the fascinating world of archaeology. Don't miss an issue. Subscribe online or ask for Archaeological Diggings at your local newsagent.
Hi, welcome back. Well, it's great to have a fellow Christian television film guy in the studio this morning from Brazil, Regis Terencio. How are you, Regis?
I'm very good. I'm pleased to be here. It's an honor. Thank you for having me here.
Now, your English is very good, and I understand you learnt it from homeless people in Ireland. How did that happen?
Yeah, that is true. Well, I wanted to get involved in filmmaking, and I knew that I had to do it in USA because filmmaking in Brazil is is not as good in USA, and I moved to Ireland to learn English, and I didn't have any money, so I stayed with the homeless for a couple of weeks, and I used to pick up...
Do you mean you lived in homeless shelters? Is that what you mean?
Well, I did have a shelter, but during the day I would eat with the homeless, and I would pick up coins from the streets, because they used to serve food, they used to serve lunch, but they didn't have dinner, so... I used to pick up coins on the streets and go to the market and get noodles. It was 12 cents noodles.
Wow.
Yeah. And I always wanted to try the 13 cents noodles, but that was always too expensive for me.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
So this is the stereotype of the starving artist. You really took that to the full extreme, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. Well, I didn't really care to do it. Like, I enjoyed it. I was willing to do it because I know that I wanted to be a filmmaker. I wanted to do film for God, and I was willing to do whatever it cost to do it. And even when I went to USA to make connections and to go to festivals and stuff to meet people, I didn't have enough money, so I just took my sleeping bag. So I would sleep on the streets and go to the festivals during the day. I did find some people that really helped me there. So Rodney and Laurie from Gideon Film Festival, they really helped me. And Clayton and Marlene gave me shelter once.
Wow. So this, I mean, like you say, you just be prepared to, sacrifice anything, do whatever it takes. And that attitude has taken you to some interesting places. You have been involved in movies in the US, in Brazil, in other places.
Yeah.
Are you normally the good guy, the bad guy, the romantic leading man?
Well, now with this drug dealer kind of look, I'm now usually the bad guy. But actually growing my beard and my hair for a role is not necessarily a bad role, but it's a role that usually we see that kind of character as neat, but they want to have a different kind of look. So I would be a good guy that looks like a bad guy.
Looks a bit rough, yeah. Okay. I'm thinking of Heath Ledger, being the bad guy, and that just really seemed to mess him up psychologically. Is it difficult to be the bad guy, to sort of inhabit this evil character, to take that evil on board? Is it a challenge for you spiritually?
Well, it always depends on how you prepare to do the character. So I don't know how to call it in English. In Portuguese you say like you have to do some lab work. I don't know if you'd say the same in English, but when you do a Christian film, I'm mostly involved in Christian films, so we also do it, but we have like a spiritual view of it. And
so there's spiritual preparation involved,
it's
as
so
well
much
as
different. Yeah, it's so much different. And even during the filming, like we always pray before we start filming. We always pray after we stop filming, and we have counseling. It's
so there's a lot of support there. Yeah. Wow. Now you're really passionate about film and television, this screen sort of based ways of telling stories. Why do you think that medium is so powerful?
Like making films and media in general, we tell stories, and that's my passion for making film. That films have the power of storytelling, and Jesus was the best storyteller ever.
True.
And
but he did it in person. He did it with public speaking.
Yeah.
But you're doing it with film. So what's special about film? This is what I'm trying to push you on.
Okay. So different from stage drama and TV, film is something more realistic. So you can see like when an actor is on stage, he has to do like big movements and stuff. But when it's film, it's something really subtle. It's so subtle that if you are on film and you are sad, you have to somehow people know you are sad, but you are trying to hide it.
Yes.
Because when people realize you are sad and you are trying to hide it, then they cry. Because that's what they do in real life.
Because the tiniest twitch on your face, combined with the music and the cinematography, can really get across a message.
So film is much more real, and you can identify much more with film because of this kind of subtleness, you know.
Yeah, wow. Now, another interesting part of your work is that you actually sort of do motivational talks with groups of young people at churches and schools and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I give talks because usually people see like these amazing stories and like these awesome films that I'm working on, and they think of the success and the glamour and it looks fancy, but they never know that you have to be really vulnerable, you know, like if you want to take the risk to be successful, you have to take the risk to fail. You know, you have to be vulnerable. And so I give these talks to tell them that if you have to pursue what God put you on earth to do, no matter what it costs, it doesn't have to be easy, it has to be possible. And that's very fulfilling to inspire people and to do, you know what.
I mean, there's a certain line of thinking that says things are too easy for young people these days. They actually need to deliberately go out there and find a challenge, to do something hard. Do you sort of subscribe to that view?
Yeah, sure. You give much more value to the things you've conquered when it was not easy. The hardest it is, actually, the best it feels when, you know, like when you see like, oh, when those people come to you, those young people come to you and they say, oh, I did this and this because I heard your talk and that inspired me to do it.
Wow.
And you feel like, wow, well, praise God, you know.
Yeah. It makes it all worthwhile.
Yeah, you know, like it was worth it to do it.
Wow, that's incredible. Now, if our viewers, Regis, are interested in checking out, you know, your show reel or some of the projects you've been involved in, do you have a website they can visit?
No, they can just add me on Facebook, and my Facebook is basically my page.
Yeah, that's the way a lot of people are doing it these days.
Facebook or Instagram.
Okay, so there you go. Check out Regis Terencio. The spelling is there on your screen on Facebook, and check out his photos and videos. Hey, thanks so much for coming into InFocus and chatting to us.
Thank you for having me here. It was a pleasure.
We'll see you straight after the break.
Signs of the Times, a magazine for a world on the brink. And this month in Signs, is there really a place reserved to burn sinners for eternity? Why your morning ritual may be negatively impacting your health. There are Facebook friends, and then there are real-life friends. How the Magna Carta, signed 800 years ago, shaped our world today. All in this month's Signs of the Times. Subscribe to Signs today and change your life.
Well, time flies when you're having fun, and our time is up for this week.
If you missed part of the programme or you'd like to take another look at one of our segments, they're all there at our website for you to enjoy. And that website is, of course, record.net.au.
Yes, we're there, frozen in time, just waiting for you to press the play button.
Stay in touch. We'll see you next time on Record in Focus.
God bless.